Bob Dylan singing Isis. Did you ever hear that one, Isis? Three chords, 17 verses. Quite a song. So I had the great honor and pleasure, dream of getting to interview this guy. Just getting to be with him would be great, but getting to interview him was great because I had the license to ask questions about songwriting. That's why I was there, and that's why he did it. I was the editor of Song Talk, which was the journal of the National Academy of Songwriters. Great job with the mission to interview the world's greatest songwriters. And at the top of the mountain, the toppermost of the great songwriters, this guy, because he changed songwriting in our lifetime, at least my lifetime. Maybe a lot of you were alive for a lot of it, but I was, and it changed in a big way. I just thought it would keep changing as drastically as it did, but he was the guy that caused that. And so it was great to get to interview him. I'd requested an interview for years. Didn't think it would ever happen, but it did. It was at the Beverly Hills Hotel, set up by Elliot Mintz, who was representing only this guy and their other clients named John and Yoko at the time. Then it was Yoko only. Just got sad. But Dylan, meet him at the bungalow way in the back of the Beverly Hills Hotel. I remember he was wearing a T-shirt. We're going to drink coffee, but there were no cups, only glasses. And Elliot's like, don't worry, I'll get you cups. And Bob said, no, glasses are fine. Actually, it tastes better out of glass. He was right. And ever since then, I've been often drinking coffee out of the glass because Bob did with me. And I remember we sat down, and he was in a good mood, and he had read my Paul Simon interviews. I think that's why he did it. He said, man, you and Paul Simon talked a lot, didn't you? I love that he pays attention more than you might think he does. And then he goes, so songwriting. What do I know about songwriting? Start me off somewhere, which I thought was funny, as if I would just let him go on his own. But actually, I'd prepared. I had 1,400 pages of questions, which was too much and not enough, to quote Bob. But I had a great time. He let me really talk about every subject I wanted to get to, and they all pertain to songwriting, of course, because that was the promise. And I'm only going to talk about art, music, songwriting, creativity, because he'd been interviewed, as you guys know, for years, and they'd ask him about anything under the sun. And he said many times, it's kind of strange that people ask me so many questions because I'm not a prophet, I'm not a scientist. And they go, well, what should they talk to you about, Bob? And he said, I don't know, maybe music? And so that was the idea, to talk about music, because he lives in music. We talked about songwriting, the art, the craft, chords, keys, structure of songs, rhymes. I mean, this guy was revolutionary. He changed songwriting, but he didn't destroy songwriting. He didn't explode it and build a new kind of songwriting. I mean, it was a new kind, but he used the old forms, ancient forms. But he used them with such craft. A lot of people, especially pedestrians and civilians, might not realize. But like a song like Isis, it has that A-B rhyme scheme, which means every line rhymes. They're interlocked. That's really hard to do. That's something that the Romantic poets used to do, like Shelley and Byron. And he does it, but not a lot of songwriters do that. It's very hard to contrive something that intense so it doesn't even seem contrived. It just seems perfect. It takes genius to do that. It's what he is. He's a songwriting genius. And very funny, too, as you probably know, and kind of brilliant. And one thing I did with him, I wasn't sure he'd let me do this, but I'm sure, like a lot of you, I carry around a lot of his lines from songs. Some lines I've just loved forever, and they mean a lot to me. Like, I made shoes for everyone, even you, and I still go barefoot. That just seems to be the best Dylan metaphor. That he's still barefoot, even though everyone else is wearing his shoes. I love that. And but there are other lines that I love. I'm not even sure why. They just have a certain resonance to me, and they're kind of haunting and poetic and beautiful. And I've loved them for decades. And for Dylan Fest this year, I sang Absolutely Sweet Maria, song I've been singing for a long time, from Blonde on Blonde. And so I asked him about a line in that song that I loved. And the line is, I'm standing here looking at your yellow railroad in the ruins of your balcony. And that was the first one. I asked him, do you mind if I name lines out of context? And he said, yeah, you can name anything you want to, man. By the way, they're in this book, Songwriters on Songwriting, which I'm really happy to have him in it. Because having him in it kind of makes it important. Bob Dylan. Got a few other good ones. These are good looking, aren't they? So I asked him about that line. It was the first out of context line I asked him. I stand here looking at your yellow railroad and the ruins of your balcony. He pauses. Okay, this is what he says. Okay, that's an old song. No, let's not even say old. How old? Too old. It's matured well. It's like old wine. Now, look, that's as complete as you can be. Every single letter in that line, it's all true on a literal and an escapist level. So I asked, is it that truth that gives it so much resonance? Because we know sometimes that's the thing. The songwriters are using personal truth, and you sense that. This is true. It isn't phony. Is it that truth that adds so much resonance? And he says, oh, yeah, exactly. See, you can pull it apart, and it's like Yellow Railroad. Well, yeah, all of it. So I figured that was it. So I moved on to the next song, which was True Love Tends to Forget. I was lying down in the reeds without any oxygen. I saw you in the wilderness among the men. I saw you drift into infinity and come back again. He said, this is his response. Those are probably lyrics left over from my songwriting days with Jacques Levy. To me, that's what they sound like. Oh, they're not actually. And then he goes, getting back to the Yellow Railroad. And I love that because it showed this really mattered to him. And what he pointed out was every word was true. In other words, he's not just contriving these things. They're not random. They're not just because you're stoned on some drug and you're coming up with images that don't even mean anything to you. Quite the opposite. There's more meaning to all of these lines and all of these pictures than anyone might know, but he knows. So getting back to the Yellow Railroad, that could be from looking someplace. Being a performer, you travel the world. You're not just looking out the same window every day. You're not just walking down the same old street. So you must make yourself observe whatever. But most of the time it hits you. You don't have to observe, it hits you. Like Yellow Railroad could have been a blinding day when the sun was so bright on a railroad someplace and it stayed on my mind. These aren't contrived images. These are images which are just in there and have got to come out. If it's in there, it's got to come out. Bob Dylan.